Every thought Carlos shared after the match revealed a competitor shaped by experience, confidence, and a growing sense of self-awareness that is only forged through repeated battles at the highest level of the sport. Expression of belief in his own ability was not delivered with loud bravado, but with quiet certainty, the kind of confidence that comes from countless hours of training, brutal defeats, and moments of clarity where doubt begins to lose its grip. From his perspective, the indoor court was never viewed as enemy territory or unfamiliar ground, but rather as another arena where his evolving game could breathe, adapt, and slowly master a different rhythm of tennis. The idea of being able to stand toe-to-toe with Jannik Sinner indoors did not feel like wishful thinking to him, but like a natural extension of the work he had already done in silence. Awareness of Sinner's improvement was something Carlos spoke about with genuine respect and careful observation. Perception of Jannik was not as a static opponent, but as a moving target, a player who absorbs pain, disappointment, and failure, only to return sharper, stronger, and more dangerous. Emphasis placed on Sinner's serve revealed how deeply it affected the structure of the match from Carlos' internal point of view. Speed of the ball through the air, precision of placement, and the way Sinner disguised intention until the final fraction of movement created constant tension in the return games. Feeling rushed before the point even became part of the psychological pressure that built beneath the surface, forcing Carlos to make decisions faster than comfort would normally allow. Recognition of this growth in Sinner did not come with resentment, but with an understanding that this is exactly what separates ordinary champions from generational ones. Reflection on indoor tennis formed a central theme in his analysis. Indoor conditions strip away external variables such as wind and sun, leaving only pure timing, footwork, and instinct. Clean ball striking becomes a requirement rather than an advantage, and hesitation becomes far more visible under artificial lights and closed arenas. Carlos understood that this environment magnifies small technical flaws and rewards those who take control early in points. Instead of feeling limited by this reality, he spoke with a sense of curiosity, as if viewing the surface not as a threat, but as a puzzle still being solved. Feeling closer to unlocking his best version indoors gave him a quiet satisfaction, because being competitive in uncomfortable conditions is often the strongest indicator of long-term growth. Honest self-assessment of his own performance included both pride and dissatisfaction existing in the same emotional space. Satisfaction came from knowing that the level reached during the match was not accidental, and that the rallies, serves, and movement were built on real progress rather than lucky moments. Dissatisfaction came from understanding how fragile momentum is at this level, and how easily it can slip away in just a few points. The realization that he could push Sinner to the edge in such an environment gave him confidence that his ceiling was still rising, and that the work being done behind closed doors was slowly taking shape in real competition. Respect for Sinner grew stronger when he described how the Italian responds to defeat. Observation of Sinner's pattern of returning stronger after losses revealed an admiration for his mentality. Instead of falling apart or losing direction, Sinner appears to study pain like a lesson, extracting information from failure and turning it into fuel. Witnessing this transformation firsthand forced Carlos to elevate his own standards, because competing with someone like that leaves no room for complacency. Feeling the pressure created by Sinner's improved serve reminded him that technical growth at this level is often invisible to the crowd, but painfully obvious to the opponent standing on the other side of the net. Discussion of tactical awareness showed how complex the match truly felt from inside the court. Perception of reality from within a rally was described not as a simple exchange of strokes, but as a continuous stream of calculations involving timing, positioning, anticipation, and emotional regulation. Process of debriefing the match with his team was portrayed as a ritual of honesty where every instinct, mistake, and successful decision is placed openly on the table. Carlos placed great value on this process because it allows him to translate emotion into information and information into action. Letting his coaches see through his internal experience bridges the gap between what is felt and what can be fixed. Influence of the slight physical issue in his hamstring was described with calm realism rather than exaggeration. Sudden awareness of discomfort after chasing a difficult serve introduced an element of uncertainty, but he refused to let that uncertainty turn into an excuse. Movement remained aggressive, and willingness to sprint and change direction stayed intact. Thoughts about limitation appeared, but they remained background noise rather than dominant fear. Decision to remain honest about the injury while deliberately refusing to blame it for the loss revealed a strong sense of responsibility for his own performance. Strategic choices during the match displayed maturity in his evolving tennis IQ. shift toward more aggressive positioning was not reactive panic, but a deliberate adjustment born from understanding that passive exchanges would only feed Sinner's rhythm. Moving forward, finishing points at the net and taking risks earlier were seen as necessary weapons rather than reckless gambles. Recognition that such adjustments actually worked for long periods of the match gave him confidence in his instincts, even though the final scoreboard did not reflect victory. Pride came from knowing that he had not played a fearful match, but a brave one. That atmosphere inside the stadium was described through a lens of emotional intelligence. Instead of labeling the crowd as hostile, Carlos perceived the environment as intense and electric. Energy flowing from the stands was interpreted not as rejection, but as a natural wave of support toward a player who had earned it. Feeling that kind of pressure did not shrink his presence, but heightened his awareness. Comparing this experience to past moments in his career revealed how much he had matured emotionally. Memory of the difficult match in Paris years earlier remained vivid because it represented a turning point, a moment where fear started transforming into resilience. Understanding of how the match slipped away focused heavily on missed opportunities rather than overall inequality. Awareness of set points left unconverted haunted him not as regret, but as clear evidence of where growth must continue. Particular attention was given to the way Sinner elevated his second serve in critical moments, transforming a defensive shot into an offensive weapon. That shift disrupted expectations and forced Carlos into rushed responses that altered the rhythm of the tiebreak. These are the moments that define matches between elite players, moments where courage and execution intersect in fractions of a second. Frustration surfaced most strongly when he reflected on his performance at the net. Volleys that should have been finished cleanly stayed in his mind as symbolic of the fine line between dominance and vulnerability. Moments where the racket face opened slightly too much, where foot placement was just half a step late, or where decision-making hesitated for a heartbeat became central points of analysis. Understanding that these mistakes gave Sinner a chance to turn defense into attack created a sharp but productive form of disappointment. Despite the pain of defeat, his tone remained anchored in growth rather than bitterness. Belief that small margins would eventually begin to favor him came from experience rather than blind hope. Clarity about what went wrong offered direction rather than confusion, and that clarity is often what separates long-term champions from players who remain stuck in cycles of frustration. Every missed volley, every rushed return, and every lost tiebreak became, in his mind, a brick in the foundation of the player he is still becoming. Final reflections carried the tone of someone who sees rivalry not as a personal battle, but as a shared journey toward excellence. Respect for Sinner was not weakened by loss, but strengthened by the quality of the fight. Understanding that their matches are decided by details rather than dominance gave him peace rather than anger. Sense of inevitability about future rematches was not filled with anxiety, but with quiet excitement, because opportunities to face opponents of that level are seen as privileges rather than burdens. Belief in the idea that indoor tennis will become a natural extension of his game remained strong in his closing thoughts. Awareness that adaptability is the true currency of longevity in tennis shaped the way he spoke about his future. Confidence that physical development, tactical sharpness, and emotional stability are still rising formed the emotional backbone of his reflection. Pride in the performance did not come from the result, but from the courage to play bravely in difficult conditions against one of the most dangerous players in the world. Deep inside his analysis lived the understanding that this match was not a loss of identity, but a step toward refinement. Future encounters with Sinner, in his mind, will not be shaped by fear of past mistakes, but guided by lessons carved from pressure. Knowing that greatness is often born from narrow defeats gave him comfort, because it meant this match was not an ending, but a chapter in a story still being written. Calm certainty about his own trajectory remained the final quiet message behind every word he spoke. Growth was not finished, evolution was not complete, and the rivalry was far from resolved. In that understanding lived a dangerous truth for everyone else watching. Because a version of Carlos that has processed a match like this is a version that comes back sharper, smarter, and more relentless than before.